Hey family. Okay, this is future Tanyelle, editing Tanyelle, that is currently editing this Tuesday talk video. And I noticed that there are a few points that I missed or some details that I needed to add that I thought were important to note in this video. So I'm going to be popping in and out filling you guys in on maybe some details that were a little scattered and all over the place. So yeah, so you'll see me in and out of this video as I edit it and try to explain in more detail. Let's jump in. Hey family, hello, hi. Welcome back to my life, y'all. I hope you guys are doing amazing. I hope life is treating you kindly and well. Let me know how you guys have been doing in the comments down below. I'm gonna have to lock my door because these kids have no boundaries. So let me go do that. Today we are going to sit down and do our much awaited catch up on what happened to our third location. I kind of touched on that briefly in my last update video. You guys kind of saw me talk about that briefly, and so if you are interested in learning about what happened to our third location, then stick around for the video. But before we jump into this video, if you are new here, hello, hi, welcome. My name is Tanyelle. I am the non-traditional mommy, and on this channel we do life, y'all. We talk about life, we vlog, we do reviews, basically anything that pertains to life and is placed on my heart. I'm a mom of 12 and a business owner. We homeschool, all those things. I hope you stay and join the family by hitting the subscribe button. To the rest of my non-traditional family, you guys are the MVPs. I love you bunches. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for hanging in there with me, y'all. Okay. Whew, y'all, where do I start? We've been doing this for almost 7 years. Essentially, when we started to grow this business and decide to grow and expand, one of the things that we felt like we had learned that's now changed is that we go where we're wanted. And by that we mean when we first started growing this business, it was all because we were pursued. So we started as an inflatable company and built that brand, made a name for ourselves, and got out there to where we were then pursued to move into the indoor realm. And that's how we got into the whole indoor space. Well, then we were approached again by another area, which is in Alabama, and it went really well. So we expanded out to Alabama. Our thing again was we go where we're wanted. So that is how we have navigated expanding our business. And I say that, I start this off with that because I think at the time I felt like that was so important, the whole go where you're wanted. But now that's kind of changed, and this will make sense in just a second. So fast forward to our third location. We have been thinking about a third location. Where will we go? You know, had kind of had some ideas and some dreams in our heads about where we wanted to go. And we pitched our idea before our second location opened to the Tanger Outlets. And so we had pitched to them before, but then they decided to go with a bigger brand, and we were like, okay, great, you know, we understand. And so it didn't take off. Well, fast forward to 2021. Yeah, 2021, our concept was sent out to all of the Tangers. Like, they sent it out and was like, hey, there's this really cool concept. Do any of you guys have space, and would any of you guys be interested? And we had about 3 or 4 Tangers reach out to us and was like, we would love to have you here. But the South Carolina location was the most aggressive. I mean, they were aggressive, you guys. And that South Carolina was so far for us. Like, it was 10 hours from where we lived, and we just, in our brains, were thinking, there's no way, we can't go that far. Like, that's too far. And South Carolina was not on our radar. Like, we were thinking other areas that have reached out to us, and we're kind of more interested in those areas. But that particular mall was the most aggressive. Their what do you call it? I'm drawing a blank, y'all. What do you call it? Property manager was more aggressive. And so in October of 2021, they were like, hey, just come out here. Just come see the space. Tell us what you think, whatever. And so we were like, okay, we'll go out. We'll go out there. Fine. And so we went out there. I have a vlog if you're interested in watching that vlog. We went out there in October, took the drive, took the kids, and toured the area, toured the mall. Now, mind you, we had already done like the market research. It was just more so just the idea of like, okay, where is this place in Hilton Head? And so we drove out there, toured the space that they initially told us about. And we were like, this is great. Like, we really like this. Like, can we make this work? We were going back and forth, like, could this work or whatever? And at the end of that, of touring and spending the day out there with them, the property manager explained to us that the space she initially was telling us about had been leased. And so we were like, oh, okay, well, sorry, because that is the size that we need. We've learned from having 2 locations now the exact square footage that we need to thrive as a business. And so we were like, yeah, that's the only, that is the size that we need. So if you have something else that size, we'll look at it. But otherwise, that's the size we need. So she was like, well, I think this particular lease is a pop-up. So I'm not sure, if they're just going to be for the holiday season, because again, this was in October. And so she was like, I think they may just be holiday for the, Christmas season. If I find out if they are just pop up and just for the holiday and be able to get you guys that space, would you be willing? And we're like, yeah, absolutely. If you are able to get us that space, we will absolutely be willing to, consider and talk numbers and all that, good stuff. So, Lord and behold, she was like, yes, they're not going to be staying. They are a pop-up. Okay, so I need to pop in right here because I think that this is important to note. This particular store that we were told was initially just a pop-up and going to be there for the holidays, and that, they were going to be leaving after that, ended up not being a pop-up, but similar to us in the sense that they were small business on a specialty lease, which I'll talk about in just a second here. And they essentially moved them to the space that she showed us that was available, that was too small for us, and that space was next door to us. So they moved them over to that space so that we could take the bigger space. Now, we didn't know this at the time. We thought that, again, they were a pop-up. They were only going to be there for the holidays, and that they, were leaving after that. We learned this information once we took possession of the space and got there and had met the owner a couple times. And when we first met her, she was so salty and like kind of mean and nasty toward us, and we didn't understand why. And then later it came out that they moved her so that we could have that particular space. And I'll talk about how we found that information out in just a second as well. So back to it. So that space will be available next year, 2022. So we were like, perfect. Okay, let's talk numbers. So we did that. When we go into new areas and new spaces, we tend to do specialty leases, because this is the part where people got confused when all of this happened to us. So specialty leases are designed for small businesses, for new concepts, things like that. And essentially, it's a way to protect yourself as a small business, but also for corporations to protect themselves. And the way that happens is you go in, it may be for a year, 2 years, however long, but it gives you the opportunity to see if this concept is actually going to work in this space. Will you survive? And if it's not working, you can pull out as a business without any repercussions. You're not locked into this lease. The flip side of that, though, is that the corporation, the company, has the ability to move you out or end your lease if they get a larger corporation that wants to come in and take your space. So that's kind of the catch 22 to that type of lease. But we've done them before and they've worked out. We were like, great, because even though we did the market analysis, this location was still so far and it was on an island, and it was just different. So we didn't really know, like, were we going to thrive in this type of environment and this type of mall, which was an outlet mall. So it just made sense for us to not lock ourselves into something and then we flop, right? So we ended up getting everything squared away, deals made, all that good stuff, keys, everything. And y'all, when I say it was going so well, I mean, it was going so well. We had some hiccups here and there, which is going to happen, but everything was just flowing. And when it flows like that, it says to me, this is a God thing, it says to me we're on the right track. And so April, we took possession of the space, started moving in, started doing reconstruction, because our concept requires reconstruction of the place that we're moving in. And so it's a lot of moving parts. Like, we're not just going in and throwing up some inflatables. Not that anything is wrong with that, but that's just not what our concept is. So it takes a lot of reconstruction, a lot of work, a lot of planning. So we started reconstructing and designing that space in April. And then in July, we had our grand opening, and it was amazing. I said this in my last video. It was amazing. Even the property manager was shocked at just how great our grand opening went. And then that following week, like, all of the head people of the company were going to be in town. And so, she was bringing them by our space, and it was that whole week, y'all. I mean, it was crazy busy, booming. So they all got to see it. They all appeared to love it. There was kind of chitter chat of, like, expanding into some of their other properties. We were excited. We felt like they were excited. I mean, it was just amazing, y'all. It felt really, really good. All of the customers were amazing. It was just a good feeling. And so moving forward, things were going really well. The store was performing. It was pacing to be our top performing store. And it had just opened, y'all. Like, we hadn't even touched or scratched the surface of advertising or none of that. Like, it was crazy. It was crazy. And we were excited. I mean, who wouldn't be, right? We were just so excited. So, as I stated earlier, the store that was in the space that we ended up taking was moved next door to us in the smaller space. So, fast forward a couple months later, we were talking to the owner, and she was telling us that she was being moved again. And we were like, again, what is happening? And that's when she revealed to us that they had moved her to the space next door to us so that we could take over that space. And we were like, we had no idea. We would have never done that if you weren't willing, to move. We thought that you weren't even going to be here, whatever. And this was a toy store. And so we were super sad, because obviously toy store, kids play space next door to each other is the perfect storm, right? And by that time, her and I had kind of started building relationships and things like that. And so she was now super sad because she was being moved yet again to another space in a whole different area far away from us, where there was not going to be any like kid kind of stuff. And she was being replaced by this
chair store that I'm going to talk about that we were also told was another pop-up, and they were only going to be there, during the holiday season. So all this is important, you guys. I think it will make sense as we continue on in the story. All right, back to it.
So, furniture store had moved in a space next to us, but they were a pop-up, so we were told they were also a pop-up. And it became a dual relationship, because what would happen is parents would come with their kids to our space. One parent would stay with the child, while typically mom would go and look in this store and buy furniture because they could. In, I want to say, November-ish. I can't remember the exact time frame, but it had to be around November. They had called us and said, hey, we want to send somebody over to take pictures of y'all back storage room. Y'all, it's bedtime in my house, so the kids are going to be on 105. Give me a second, y'all. Oh, y'all. Okay. Where was I? So we're thinking, well, at least I was. I'm like, our back area is totally different because it's catered to kids. So what? I don't understand what they're coming to like look at. We had walls built, like it was different. So, but nonetheless, we were like, okay.
So let me explain this a little bit, because I said in here that they sent someone over to take pictures of our back storage area. And what happened was we were told that they had a new tenant that was interested in moving into their other center. They had two centers, a 1 and a 2. And they told us they had a tenant that was interested in moving into their second center. And they had a back storage area in that space that looked similar to ours, and the tenant couldn't really see a vision, or didn't really see how, I guess, they could expand that space. And so they wanted to show them what we had done to like knock down walls and things like that, that maybe they could do to expand their back storage area. So that's what we were being told, that this was essentially a new tenant that was looking to move into the facility, and trying to visualize if they could make that particular space work. So I wanted to explain that because, again, I think that's important. Okay, back to it.
They came over and took pictures and all excuse me, all this other stuff. And then they had asked, okay, well, can we see your other storage area? Because we had 2 storage areas. So we're like, okay, So they looked at that, and then that was it.
So just to clarify, what was happening was the chair store next to us was trying to decide between our space and the space that they tried to move us to. And so essentially they wanted to see our back storage area in comparison to the other place back storage area, to make a decision. And ultimately, and I'll say here later, that our space was about 300 square feet bigger, and what made it bigger was those back storage areas. That's what kind of made the difference between the 2 spaces. So that's really what was happening. It wasn't that there was a new tenant coming in and trying to get ideas. It was, we want to see what that back storage area looks like in comparison to this back storage area, so that we can make a decision. So needed to clarify that. All right, y'all, back to it.
Thought, okay, well, we did poke like, oh, who's the new people looking to move in or whatever, but that kind of stuff they can't share with you. So it was never said. We now know what it was, but at the time, it wasn't said or whatever. At that same time, there was buzz that the pop-up shop next to us was going to stay and become a permanent store, which we thought, okay, great. It's cool. It's been, a duality type relationship. They had lines every day, that store. Like, it was crazy busy. So we knew they were like thriving busy, which we thought, this is great because they're right next door to us. So people who wouldn't have saw us are standing in line. They're like, what's that place? Oh, I can come back and bring my kid. Like, it was a duality relationship. So we thought this is all good. December rolls around. We are set up. That's where Santa was housed, was at our location. We had story time with Santa, cookies with Santa. We had that. We had some carolers come to the store. Like, it was just an amazing relationship. You know, it just felt so good. We were like, this is it. Like, this is our space. This is our thing. Like, we are happy here. And it just felt good. So we were selling tons of memberships. Our parties were picking up. We just knew, like, this is good. Like, we see the potential. We haven't even been open for 6 months yet, and this thing is crazy. So holidays rolled around. We sold tons of memberships for Christmas. Just we were blowing it out the water. January hits. We're still trying to staff, fully staff. We're slowly staffing. We had an assistant manager. We had a manager. We were trying to hire one more assistant manager and a couple of just regular cashiers. So we were working on that. My lease was up in February for my apartment. So I was starting to feel a little stressed because I'm like, oh, I got one more month, and I need to make sure this store is fully staffed before we leave. I didn't want to leave the manager without being fully staffed, even though I knew she could handle it. I want to say January 20th. Had to be January 20th, that week of January 20th.
So that Monday, I had got back to South Carolina, and as I'm going to say here, Lonnie calls me, tells me all this information, and then that Wednesday, he calls me again, tells me all this information, and then finally that Friday is when I decided to send an email. So this was all within a week time span. So it was Monday I got back into town. We started getting the calls, the emails. Finally on Friday, I sent out the email I'm going to discuss here. And then that Monday, we were officially served. So I needed to kind of explain that timeline because it wasn't weeks or 2 weeks or things like that. It was literally a week. And honestly, it wouldn't have even been that week if the new property manager hadn't started kind of putting the buzz in his ear on that Monday that this was going to happen. Essentially, had she not did that, we wouldn't have known anything until that following Monday when we were served our termination of lease papers. Okay.
My husband Lonnie calls me because I'm back there. He's back at home with the kids, and he calls me. He's like, so there's rumor that a big box store wants our space. And the rumor is that they're considering it, that Tanger is considering giving them our space and, possibly moving us. And so, I'm like, okay, rumors start every day. Like, I'm not worried about this. If they were going to move us, they would have told us. Like, I'm not worried. I haven't heard this from anybody. Nobody said anything to us. There's no signs, but there were. There's no clues. Like, I'm not dealing with this. I'm like, who told you? Because to me that mattered. And he was like, well, she's the new property manager. So I'm like, okay, she's saying she don't really know, that she's not in the meetings, but there's just kind of talk and buzz going around that that's possible. So I'm like, they do know that we don't have the type of concept that we could just pack up and go to another store. Like, we're not retail. And he was like, yeah, she just kind of put it in our ear because, she just kind of wanted us to know, but she don't know for sure. And I'm like, okay, well, if she don't know for sure, then I'm not like, I don't want to play these games. That's kind of how I felt. I don't play the rumor games. And in my mind, I'm thinking most businesses, like, we're not playing these type of games. I'm trying to run a business and I'm trying to staff this store.
Y'all, I swear, I should just probably redo this whole video. The reason I'm saying this, or the reason that was coming up, is because in my brain, I was thinking there's no way that, there would just be this rumor going around and we're not involved in the conversation. That was what I was thinking. I was thinking, surely if there was talk of this happening, we would have been notified that there was talk of this potentially happening, and we would be in on that discussion. So that's what I was thinking. I was more so thinking, okay, this can't be true. And then, because I knew that this was their behavior because of the toy store that I talked about earlier, I was saying, well, they do know that we're not like the toy store where we can just pack up our retail and move to another location. So surely it wouldn't be the same thing where we just find out one day you need to move, kind of situation. So in my brain, I was thinking, I don't know if I believe this because we're not the same as retail. Surely they wouldn't do that. Surely we would have a heads up. Surely they would be talking to us. It wouldn't be hearsay, that kind of thing is what I was thinking. And also because we had been told earlier, as I kind of stated earlier, that they were talking to us from the standpoint of wanting to put us in multiple outlets, build our relationship and our partnership. So I'm thinking, well, if we talked about that, surely they would be coming to us and saying, hey, y'all, this is what's happening and potential. So that's what I was saying here. I wasn't saying like, well, surely they would. I was kind of in my brain thinking, this isn't how they would conduct business. That's what I was thinking.
So I just pushed it to the side. And then he kept, so that Friday, Friday, he called me and was like, I don't know, like she sent me another message saying that this might really happen and we should consider looking at the other space that they have. And so at that point, y'all, I was like, okay, I'm just going to email like the person, right? The big person. I'm just going to email them, her boss essentially, and just be like, can we talk? Because what is going on? And so I sent her an email, was like, hey, is there any way we can meet and chat? I have some questions, some concerns. And she didn't respond. This was on a Friday. So I was like, okay, it's the weekend. That Monday rolled around. No response. I sent her another email. I was like, hey, I'm just following up on my email that I sent you. Is there any way we could talk? She responded back, I'm no longer over that property. You want to talk to such and such. So I'm like, yes, I'm aware, but I'm just trying to get some clarity because there's a lot of like rumors going around. There was no response. Probably about noonish, 1 or noonish or whatever, about 1 o'clock, the property manager called me and was like, so this is happening. This is going to happen. We're going to move you guys. And I want you to come look at the space that we have. And y'all, I can't even begin to describe the type of emotions that I had or feelings. I posted the video saying we might potentially move. And in that video, I was so upset. I was by myself. Lonnie was at home. There was nobody for me to like pour those emotions on, and I just needed to talk through it. And so I pulled out my camera, like I'm just gonna talk to the camera because I'm trying to process. I was feeling like, why is this even coming up? And I'm trying to staff, like, is this a real thing? Is this not a real thing? And so I was trying to process because I said earlier, we have to reconstruct, and that takes manpower and money. It's not something that we can do in a week. Like we started reconstructing that store in April and we did not open until July. So it's not just something we can just snap our fingers and it's done. So in my mind, I'm like, it's going to have to be a whole lot to convince me to move to this other space. And so she was like, well, can you just look at the space? So I'm like, fine. I did. It was smaller than our current space. Now remind you earlier, when they offered us a smaller space, I explained we couldn't because we needed a certain amount of foot space. So I explained, I'm like, this space is too small for us. It's not going to work. I didn't really like the location that it was in the area. And so I was like, it's just not going to work. She was like, well, if we can provide you with some finances to help. And then for a minute, I kind of thought like, well, maybe because again, that store was doing well. But I'm like, it's not just that. We also have to have the manpower to come in. And it was so hard getting contractors to do the things that we needed to do that first go around. We knew that the second go around, it was going to be just as hard. So now we're thinking there's going to be shutdown time. We got to try to reconstruct. And it's going to be a smaller space. But it wasn't dead at that time. It was just all these thoughts in my head. And so I'm like, okay, I don't know, let's talk numbers. Let me see what you guys are willing to offer and do, and we can go from there. So fast forward, probably about 2 hours later, she got me on the call with the VP of the whole thing. Got on a call with her, and now y'all, in this meeting with her, I'm thinking this thing isn't signed, sealed, delivered, right? I'm thinking we're still talking like, hey, this looks like it's gonna happen, but we haven't signed anything yet. It's not like a done deal, but we're letting y'all know. So in this meeting with her, I'm essentially explaining to her why I don't feel like we should be moved and explaining our concept. She had never been to our location. She didn't really understand. So I'm trying to explain to her the magnitude of what she's asking us to do, right? She told us who the people were, which was the store that was next door to us. Now, granted, this is a national chain store, so it's not like there's some small like us. They are a national chain, but they're not Louis Vuitton either. So I was like, you have got to be freaking kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. You want us to move for a chair store that they wanted a larger space because they were doing really well, and they felt like they could do better if they had a bigger space and could have more inventory. Great, I get it. But the space you guys were trying to move us into was larger than the space that they were currently in. But smaller than our space by, I think, like 300 square feet. But when you're dealing with kids, 300 square feet matters, okay? And I'm like, why not have them take that space? And it was like, well, they want your space. And that's the space we're going to give them. So I'm still like thinking this isn't a done deal, right? So I'm trying to explain like why this is so important, why we shouldn't be moved, how we just opened, how we sold all these memberships, how we have these birthday parties, what they're asking us to do, the amount of time we would have to be closed. I'm explaining all of this.
Okay. So another key point here that I left out is when I was saying that the space they were showing us that they wanted to move us to was too small. And I explained that to them. Y'all, they said to me, well, we could always move the toy store again and you can have that space because it's larger. And I was like, for the third time, no, we are not doing that to them. I wouldn't have did it to them the first time, let alone another time. And so that also, I say in here coming up that the way I was being talked to was a big deciding factor, but that also was a deciding factor for me because what that said to me is that you have no problem or any type of regard for uprooting businesses and moving them when you feel like it's convenient to your space. And so that said to me that we were not protected, meaning that we would move into this space, other space, and Lord and behold, 6 months later, you could be knocking on the door saying, oh, sorry, we want you to go over here now because XYZ wants this space. Whoever you feel like is valued most is who gets to win in those situations. And so I didn't like that. That didn't necessarily make me feel good being like, well, we'll give you their space if you stay. Like, you should value all of your tenants because they all bring something to the table, right? And so I couldn't do that. So I needed to say that as well. I left that tiny part out because I think that was important in knowing like this is how they do business and that does not align with how we do business. All right. Back to it, y'all.
conversation, you guys, the way she talked to me in that whole meeting was literally like talking down to me, and like I was a child, and like I had no business sense. I had no idea what I was talking about. I had no idea what a big deal looked like. She basically said, look, either take what we're offering you or you can go, because what else are you going to do? That's essentially what she said at the end of the conversation. And I was like, we'll just leave. We'll just leave. We're not taking that, and we're not moving. Because it is very clear that you're not taking me seriously. And it's very clear that you don't value what we bring to your center. And I know we are bringing a lot of value. I know that. I have no doubt in my mind the value that we are bringing to this center. Now, that decision broke my heart for numerous of reasons. Our customers in that area were amazing. And when I say we built relationships with them, we still to this day, we miss so many of them, y'all. We miss so many of them. It broke our heart for that reason. But we were also like, we're not giving up. We're going to find another space, just not in this center. So we did start looking for other spaces and other areas, and that could house us and things like that. But the time frame, because that was another thing, ended that call, and she said, you'll get served your papers by the end of today, and you guys will have 30 days to be out of that space. 30 days, y'all. 30 days. Mind you, we didn't move in until July. This was January. We had only been open 6 months. And they gave us 30 days. We had parties booked through April. We had memberships that had just been sold in December. And we're like, there was no signs. But there were, because, right, they were sending people taking pictures, but they weren't telling us that's what they were doing. And I'm just like, had we known, had you guys told us in November, which would have still been too late, but in November, there's a possibility somebody wants your space, we would have ceased, booking out birthday parties and selling memberships until we knew, what are y'all doing? Because that is, who does that, right? So we had to then go in as a business and refund all of as many as we could, birthday parties, memberships, which was tanking us, right? We did great, but now we're having to reverse all of this stuff because we're trying to be morally right as much as we can as a business and give people back their money, because I'm sorry, we can't honor your birthday party because we have to be out of here in 30 days. You guys, I was like literally heartbroken, devastated, shocked. I couldn't believe it. It came out of nowhere. I just could not believe that it was Monday, 30 days, be out. So we closed our doors that Friday, because here's the thing. We now had to deconstruct a facility that was custom built. We had things in there that was custom built to that space. And we knew there was no way that we could stay open and then the last week, be out of there in time. So we had to close immediately to begin deconstructing this space. And it was just heartbreaking. I'm sitting here like, this is still heartbreaking for me. Just thinking about this all over again. So basically, long story short, we were a small fish in a big pond, and we got thrown out. I mean, that's basically what happened. In our experiences with doing this, the companies we have worked with have a sense of morals, and values. And so there was always this, we'll let you know in enough time. we're going to give you at least your full year. That was number one. It was always you get a full year. Then after that full year, we can move you. So in our minds, it was the same way. We're at least going to get a full year here before there's even talk of somebody taking our space, because the specialty leases are usually a year to 2 years, just depending. And so it was always, well, you'll get a full year before we'll even talk about moving you. Or if we talk about moving you, you have first right of refusal, which means that they could come to us and say, hey, we have this offer. Here's what they're willing to pay. Are you willing to pay the same? Are you willing, to whatever? Because we were already in the space. So that was number two. So we thought we would at least get a year, right? We were doing amazing. There was no signs to be like, ooh, we might not last here. They might kick us out, because we were thriving, y'all. Their reviews and everything was going up because of us being there. And so we thought, okay, well, at least get a year. And number two, they'll give us first right of refusal, because that's the right thing to do, right? You don't know what we can and can't pay. Now granted, they were seeing our numbers, our sales. And so one could look at our sales and compare them to this store sales and be like, oh, there's no way, they can pay what this store can pay. But you got to look at what other values we're bringing. And you didn't even give us the chance. And then number three, we thought there would be a warning. There would be a, hey, heads up, we do have somebody else interested in your space. If this happens, you guys will have 6 months to either relocate to another space that we have for you, or, to move on. This is what we thought. So never in our minds, because the people that were being so rude and so nasty, why would you sell a membership when you know you're in this kind of lease? And that's why, because we were trying to save our customers money. We didn't have to do memberships. I mean, that really was hurting us as a company doing memberships. And number two, we knew or thought we would at least be here for a year for your membership to, give you at least a year, right? Or at least 6 months where you got your money's worth. So it wasn't us being ill intent or trying to take advantage of people. We never, ever, 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 ever thought that this would happen. And it was a blow, y'all. It was a blow. It gut punched me. Not only because that store was thriving and I just knew this was perfect storm relationship. But number two, I made so many sacrifices, y'all, to open that store. So many sacrifices. But in my mind, I'm setting up a legacy that will last 100 years, right? So it was a lot of things that I missed and sacrificed to open up that store, only for it to be ripped away from us. Not because it wasn't thriving. I probably would not feel this way if the conversation didn't go the way it went. I mean, the way I was talked to, y'all, it was so bad. There was nothing about that call, that meeting, that felt like I was in a business meeting with two people in leadership, because I had to repeat myself. I had to say numerous of times, ma'am, I am the CEO of this company. I know how this works. I have a board that I have to answer to. I have investors that I have to answer to too. So this isn't a situation where it's just a mom and pop. I have people that I have to answer to and explain why this third location is going to be shutting down at this rapid speed when it was doing so well. I had to say that numerous of times. There was no mutual respect. You know what I mean? There was no mutual, let's sit down and talk about this as two business women. It was essentially like, that's what happened, y'all. This is a very long story. But I wanted to make sure that I tried to explain it the best way I could. And I know I'm probably leaving things out, because as I started retelling, I thought I was ready. I thought, you're ready. It's been a year since that store opened. And and now 6 months since it closed. So you should be ready to talk about it. But as I've sat here and tried to talk about it, I felt the energy resurfacing in my body, y'all. And so I may have been flustered and not told this story in the best way possible. But yeah, that's pretty much what happened, y'all. It was thriving. It was doing very well. It has so much potential. But we weren't a big fish. I don't even know how else to put it. We were not a big fish. We were never even given that opportunity to try to play with the big fish. That's what I'm essentially saying. There was never even a time where we were brought to the table to even try to stand up against the big fish. It was essentially, y'all can't do it, so goodbye. And not ever were we asked. And that is the part that hit me the most. We were not taken care of at all. We had an attorney, y'all, so it's not like we didn't have our own attorney that was helping us navigate this, but there was no way that he could essentially protect us in that moment because of the type of lease that we signed. Trust me, he looked and tried to see. But what we did learn in this situation was, it may seem like they want you, but just because one person wants you doesn't mean that everybody wants you. So the whole go where you're wanted is not really true. Number two, much like being an entrepreneur and owning and running your own business, you also need to own your own space. Because you are still vulnerable to other people if you are leasing, right? It doesn't matter if it's a specialty lease or a regular lease, because regular leases come with them selling, shutting down, raising your rent, whatever, all kinds of things. So unless you own it, you're still vulnerable. So that's the other thing we learned. And we've also learned how we want to grow, how we really want to grow. It was definitely a learning lesson. It pushed me into a CEO role that I wasn't in yet. I hadn't had to be in that type of role. I had to take a step back. I had to take a step down. I had to step down because it was my decision to grow and go in that direction. And then it was my decision to shut down. Of course, our board voted on it, but as the CEO, it still fell on me, right? And so I just decided to take a step down, which is what I've done. I'm dealing with this pregnancy, which that update video is coming, and it was just a lot. So I did learn a lot from that. So in hindsight, they say hindsight is 2020. Do I still feel like that was a God thing? Absolutely. Because it went so well in the beginning and that store thrived. I absolutely feel like that was a God thing. And I do feel like, for several reasons, I feel like God was showing us that what we have is amazing and it works and it's gonna be great, because we were wondering, we only had 2, we didn't really know. That location showed us, yes, absolutely. And I think God needed to show us that. And I also think we needed to have a fail. You have to have a fail. That's how you grow. You grow and you learn through failure. And while I don't see that as a failure, I do see it as a growth moment. So I feel like that's the second reason it had to happen. I needed to rest. I wasn't going to rest if that didn't happen. I feel like I needed to rest because I feel like what God is brewing is something that my brain cannot even fathom or comprehend. And so I think I'm being prepared for that. And the only way to prepare me for that was to make me sit down. And it took this, along with this pregnancy, to make me sit down, to regain my strength for what is about to come. So I absolutely feel like we made the right choice. I don't regret it at all, y'all. And will we ever go back to that area? Yes, in a heartbeat. If we found the right space, we would go back in a heartbeat because we miss our customers so much, y'all. It was so amazing. That location was just amazing. It just was. It was magical. It was magical. And so, yeah, we would go back. That's what happened. If y'all are curious on, did you say you opened a third location? Yeah, well, that's what happened. But understand that everything happens for a reason. And if God is saying jump, jump. And if a wave comes, if a storm comes, God's going to throw you a raft to save you in that storm, and you're going to get through it. My battery's going to die. If you guys have any questions, please leave them below. Okay, y'all, so as I said, my battery was going to die, and it did. It died on me. So, thank you for watching this very, very long video. I tried my best to shorten this thing as much as possible, but y'all, it is what it is. I mean, I feel like it's a long story, that I tried to make into a short story. So if you are still here, you are definitely the #1 MVP, and I love you bunches. Thanks for sticking around. And if you're still here and you're not an MVP, I mean, you need to make it official and hit the subscribe button, because you're a real one, for real, for sticking around this long. But yeah, if you guys have any other questions or would like for me to explain in more detail something that I kind of rushed over, let me know in the comments below, and I'll do that, maybe a Q&A or something like that. Because watching back this edit, I'm like, girl, you still upset a little bit in this. You still upset a little bit. I can feel my energy, and I'm like, yeah, this is still hard to talk about. So I hope I did a good job. Anyway, you guys, thank you again. I will see y'all in the next one. I love y'all. Thanks for being here. Bye.